Lance Hall here for Let's Discuss with Lance Hall. Happy to welcome Clif Magness back to the program once again, part two of what's going to be a four-parter for us, as Clif has put out a fabulous set called Road to Gold. It is a 4 CD set out on Melodic Rock Classics label, spanning some demos and songs from 1979 to 2018. Today we're into disc 2. How you doing, Clif?
Good, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Lance Hall. Let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You bet. Good to be back, buddy.
Thank you. Got into disc 2 again. Fabulous stuff. The names, the places, the songs. Let's start right with track 1, Top of the Hill. Opening scenes from one of my favorite movies from the 80s, Hot Dog.
You bet, man. Okay. So this song was written by Peter Bernstein and Mark Goldenberg.
Mm-hmm.
They were in a band called the Cretones in the late 70s, and then they went on to in the sort of the late 70s, early 80s in LA, and actually in the whole music business, it was a time for live bands, like really pared down, no overdubs, just rock and roll. You know, Billy Joel had an album back then, and Linda Ronstadt had an album called Mad Love, which these two guys were the main band for that entire album. So they were quite well known. Peter's dad is the undisputed one of the best composers in the world in history, Elmer Bernstein, who wrote the theme song to the Magnificent Seven.
Really?
Just to name one. And Peter, got his talent. And, when I told you on the last interview that when I asked my mom to loan me some money to make some demos to get a shot at being signed by Quincy Jones, I asked one of my good friends at the time, John Joyce, who was and still is a very sought after and great background vocalist, jingle vocalist. The guy's been on the road with Pink Floyd and The Wall, and he's sung Coca-Cola commercials. He was a good friend of mine, but I asked him if he could, any way possible, get in touch with Rosemary Butler, who I was a big fan of. She's a huge singer. She sang on, the Running on Empty record of Jackson Browne's.
Yeah.
And just a great on Here Comes Those Tears Again, on Jackson's other album, she and Bonnie Raitt sang that bridge. Oh no, if I can load it up and let me in. Anyway, asking, and sure enough, he did. So, as a result, I wrote a few songs with Rosemary, and she decided to record a solo album, which Peter Bernstein produced. And so I met him. I met Andrew Gold, Bob Glob, just so many great people on that record. Yeah. And then, Peter and Mark went on to write 2 songs for the movie Hot Dog, which none of us knew would be this huge cult favorite.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just the ski sequences, in 1984 were just spectacular. And I sang the opening song, the opening credits, Top of the Hill, and included in this compilation because I received so many requests. People have emailed, Facebook, whatever, me, just wondering where they could find a copy of the song. And here it is. Yeah.
Finally.
And I'll jump to Hold On, which is the third track on this CD. It's the same thing. It was in the I think the acrobatic skiing scenes that Hold On played on, and that was even harder to find. I had to email Peter to send me a copy, which he did. So, it's just great.
The other note I've got on Hold On was you had Harry Stinson on drums,
yes,
who was in a group that recorded one of my all-time favorite 70s songs. I'm talking about Silver with Wham Bam, Shang-a-Lang, and the Sha-la-la-la-la-la, you know?
Wow. I had no idea. I've never even met Harry Stinson.
Really?
Yeah, he was, I was just called in at the last minute to sing these two songs, and I didn't meet the tracking date people.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Great
fabulous.
quintessential 70s song right there, you know?
Oh, no kidding.
And the other notes I had on Mark and Peter was Mark, of course, you mentioned Linda Ronstadt. I also worked with Al Stewart, Peter Frampton, Carla Bonoff, among others.
Yeah.
And Bernstein did music for a couple of movies. Again, these are sort of cult favorites from the 80s. Silent Rage, which I remember watching.
Okay.
And, of course, Bolero, which finally gave all us pubescent boys Bo Derek naked.
Finally.
So,
10 was just a tease.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
So those, some great names. Now, track 2, I'm going to let you pronounce the name of it, but this was a song. I want to hear Quincy's reaction to this. You were trying to an answer song to Van Halen's Jump.
Well, Quincy wanted Glenn and I to write a song with, like Jump. Okay, but he didn't mean. It took me a long time to learn what Quincy meant when he said like Jump. What he meant was, I want a massive hit from today's, with today's sounds and hooks and things like that. So we wrote the song and we called it Kai Monte K. God knows why. And I mean, in the lyric it says Kai Monte K means I'll follow you. I'll follow you into the sun. But yeah, we sent it to Quincy, and his one note to us was, "What drugs were you on when you wrote it?"
It's a fun song.
Well, yeah, it has that synth riff, the big riff and the big drums and all that. But boy, did we strike out on that one. Anyway, yeah, it was fun making it.
Yeah. Now, track 4, Lisa, It Still Matters. The first question I got to ask is, who's Lisa?
Sometimes you just write something that sounds good sung, rather than meaning anything at all. Glenn came up with that title for that song, so I just sort of went with it. That was back in the, again, it was the Human League and Depeche Mode and all those people, and we were just trying to be kind of in that. I say the note on the record. I say that I mentioned that the next 5 songs are songs that Glenn and I wrote for a project we called Miss Texas, in hopes of getting a record deal for ourselves. So we wrote those, and a record deal was not forthcoming. But Lisa, it was so fun working with the Waters, Maxine Waters. And
Julia, I read up on them. What a family there.
Oh my gosh, they sang on Better Be Starting Something for Michael Jackson. They've sung on so many things.
Supremes back in the Motown days with Phil Spector. I mean, they were everywhere.
Yeah, and just the sweetest people. They sang backup on a song I wrote with Bo Bice for his release after he came in second for American Idol. Yeah, they're just professional, show up on time, sing in tune, put a lot of feel into it, and are just lovely people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and of course Jimmy Haslett is one of the most incredible bass players on the planet. So that was fun, juxtaposing his real fretless bass with all those synthesizers.
Nice. Yeah. Wow. Track 5, Hold On to Me. To me, this had, you mentioned some of those groups, the Human League, Depeche Mode. This had that perfect mid-'80s sound, those lush keys. I heard like Mr. on this track,
Totally. Completely and utterly. They were hot at the time and still are in some circles.
Yeah.
I love Richard Page's voice, and I love him as a human being. And yeah, we just sort of tried to emulate that kind of Broken Wings sort of mid-tempo sound, And
go ahead. I'm stepping on your words.
No, please.
Francis Buckley on the mix, who's worked with Aerosmith and Billy Dean and Aerosmith Pointer Sisters, the whole 9 yards.
Oh yeah, he was an engineer at MCA Publishing, and so any demos that Glenn and I did, Francis engineered, and then went on, to be a Grammy Award winning engineer and mixer, and he mixed all of the work I did with Carney and Wendy Wilson back in 97 or 96, whenever that was.
Yeah.
And and he engineered the Wilson Phillips project, and he's and a great guy. Oh my gosh, one of my best friends ever.
I'll throw out another group who had that lush keyboard sound. To my knowledge, they only had like one big hit. They might have had a couple smaller, lower level hits. From that whole era was a group called Cock Robin. They had a song called When Your Heart Is Weak. Do you recall that one at all?
I remember the name Cock Robin, but I just don't remember that song. No.
Fabulous stuff that gets right in the same mix as this.
Okay.
Running Forever, Black and White. Again, you're still going with the keys and that lush sound and everything. What can you tell us about these?
Yeah, again, just trying to develop a direction for Miss Texas. And Glenn, being from Mississippi, is always has, a sort of Black Lives Matter, lilt to his lyric, and Black and White is strictly about apartheid. Yeah. And that came from that. And, just the guitar work on that I did. I bumped into a guy at MCA, actually, a great songwriter in his own right, Steve Diamond. And he had a Morley wah-wah volume pedal. And it has electronics and it has tubes, so it really alters the sound. And I fell in love with the sound, so I used it on Hold On to Me, and I used it on Running Forever and Black and White. And I kind of played a sort of channeled The Edge from U2, where you take your pinky left, or I take my pinky left hand, my pinky finger, and put it on the tonic on the high E string, and then index finger on the third, and the sus4 and the third on the B string. So he does that a lot, and so I sort of channel him with that.
Cool.
Yeah. And then Over Tokyo again was we're again trying to I think that we did not write that one for Michael. We were trying to establish a sound from Miss Texas.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Tokyo?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So you've been truly over Tokyo.
You bet. One day, Glenn, after the Wilson Phillips record had come out, the first album, Glenn called me at home and said, "Hey, do you have a passport?" And I said, "I do." And he said, "Well, let's go. We're going to Tokyo, to the Tokyo Music Festival, which Wilson Phillips was entered into. And they won. Okay, our one song was Hold On.
Right.
And they won the festival. That was in 1990. So I fell in love with Tokyo then as well. But we actually wrote this song before that. I think that Glenn's good at using his imagination to feel like,
Definitely.
But I've been over, yes.
Now we get into some tracks. You're aiming to try and get on Michael Jackson's Bad album.
Yes.
The Other Side of Love, I got to tell you, you are a vocal chameleon.
Well, I tried to sound as much like him as possible, even though it's virtually impossible. But I wrote that song with the fabulous Randy Goodrum.
Yeah.
Which you can rattle off some of his credits.
The man's only had a number one song every decade since 1978. He co-wrote "You Needed Me" with Anne Murray, "Oh Sherry," "Bluer Than Blue." I mean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of what this guy has done. Those are, the ones that jumped out at me.
Exactly. He told me back then that he'd had, up to that point, he had 96 covers on "You Needed Me." Up to that point, I was like, wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Right. Great guy, great songwriter. And I think honestly, Lance, we tried a little too hard on that song to move the needle with Michael, instead of writing something as fun and jaunty as PYT or or Beat It. You know, we tried to get esoteric and tried to get muso, and I mean, it's still a really good song, which is why I put it on here. And I feel like it's a really good vocal of me trying to sound like him. But yeah, I was, yeah, and thank you for your compliment. I was definitely trying to sound like Michael Jackson.
What I always liked about Michael's albums was he had the dance stuff. You know, you had your Billie Jean, you had your PYT, you had your, stuff like that, The Way You Make Me Feel. But the man always had one rocker, which of course started with Beat It with Eddie Van Halen. But on Bad, Dirty Diana with Steve Stevens on guitar blows me away to this day. I can't keep the volume level below 10 when that song comes on. You know,
I love Steve Stevens too. One of the greats. He played on my Angelica.
Really?
Yes, which didn't get a lot of notice. And in hindsight, it was kind of weird. But you know what I did is I combined operatic arias with rock tracks. And Steve actually was just getting into flamenco guitar at the time.
Okay.
So he played on Caro Nome, and we did it Latin style. And he played flamenco guitar. And so did Lyle Wortman, played on that date. We did a live date with Abel Boreal playing bass.
Wow.
And, it was, and with the vocalist Anita DeSimone was singing live in the studio. It was so much fun. Wow. But yeah, Steven, he's a Berklee School of Music, a Boston guy. And he's educated.
I saw Billy Idol Whiplash Smile Tour opening night, and we were on Steve's side of the stage, and my jaw was just dropped the entire night.
Yeah, he's so good. And he makes it look so easy.
Sure does. They sure do.
Wow.
Track 10, Saving Grace. Jeff Penny worked with Susan Anton, one of my all-time favorites, and John Schneider as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jeff was a really good friend of mine. We were both Scotty Brothers signees, and we wrote that song for Michael, and I just love the lyrics so much. It's such a love song, such a love note that he wrote. He has sadly passed in the last couple of years, so I'm very sad about that. But what a songwriter! He wrote all the songs for "Follow That Bird" too, which was a Sesame Street film.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, a good songwriter can write anything.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah. Track 11, The Children. This one fascinated me. Martin Page and the House of Stone and Light, of course, was his hit. And then I never knew this. Starship covered it on their No Protection album, and that was a big album for them.
Indeed it was.
How did it feel to go ahead?
Well, Martin wrote We Built the City and These Dreams.
Oh, okay. That's right. I read about These Dreams, yes.
Yeah, These Dreams for Heart, and We Built the City for Starship. So he had a relationship already with Peter Wolf, who was the producer for Starship at the time. But again, we originally wrote this song for Michael.
Right.
My son at the time was 2, and so I was channeling, the children being the next generation, and I had met Martin in a studio, back in the late 70s, early 80s. The LA studio scene was so vibrant that you could go into any studio for any kind of session, and you would meet so many other great musicians or artists or both. And I walked into a room, and Martin was playing ping pong with somebody else, and we hit it off. And so we wrote that song for Michael, and he gave it to Peter, and Peter loved it for Starship, and he rock that one out. He did such a great job.
How did it feel to hear it sung by two of the most iconic voices in music, Mickey Thomas and Grace Slick? That must have been pretty cool.
And I couldn't believe it. And not only that, I was invited to sing backgrounds on that album on Set the Night to Music, which is a Diane Warren song. Yeah. And so I met Grace, and I met Mickey, and it was surreal. It was amazing. Yeah.
rock and roll history right there.
Yep.
If I Had My Way, you're writing with Mark Mueller again. You're looking for like a little Mike and the Mechanics influence, which I can hear. And this was recorded at Greenock Lane Studio. What can you tell me about Greenock Lane Studio?
Well, I have to be honest, I mean, that was my house.
Okay.
In Brentwood, California, which is a suburb or just a community in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did a lot of recording in that studio, as you know from the looking down the list. Yeah, but that's where we just wrote "If I Had My Way." A lot of times, Lance, you just sit down to write a song and whatever you write comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what came out that day. We had a real, just kind of a Mike and the Mechanics sort of feeling.
Right.
But, and so Mark wrote a really positive, again, I feel like it's a love letter,
Mm-hmm.
Every day if I had my way, every day would be like today. Everything that I'm feeling would never leave me. It's just a really positive song.
Yeah. Excellent stuff.
Yeah.
Track 13, Living in a Gorgeous Hell. Adrian Gervitz. I've got the first two Baker Gervitz Army albums.
Okay.
Read about him, of course, this British guitarist, fabulous stuff. And then I read about his father, who managed Cliff Richard and the Shadows and the Kinks, back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Did you get any stories from that, or did you know that?
He was in a sour mood when he showed up that day because, and I wrote it in the liner notes, that he was in LA on a riding trip when it was hot and it was smoggy and it was, typical LA, and he was fed up with the whole scene. And so we wrote "Living in a Gorgeous Hell." And so that's what came out. It took about 2 hours. He played slide guitar, relentlessly, and then left, and that was it. So it was great, though.
Yeah, the story behind him was just amazing stuff. But that was your only contact with him, was that one time, eh?
That one afternoon. That was
wow.
It.
Final two tracks, Shake Off the Rain and Steam. Shake Off the Rain, you're saying you wrote it for a friend, Michael Dilbeck, for a film. Do you remember what film it was for?
I'm not sure. I first met Michael when Martin Page and I wrote One Way Out. And we wrote that song. Again, we just wrote that song just to write it. We weren't aiming for somebody. And it was the first song that Mr. Big recorded. And they weren't even Mr. Big yet. They had assembled, but it was still just Eric Martin as the lead singer, being billed as Eric Martin. So if you see the soundtrack for Caddyshack 2, which Michael was working on at the time as the music supervisor, it'll say Eric Martin. It doesn't say Mr. Big. However, it was Mr. Big, including the drummer, the bass player, Billy Sheehan.
Yeah.
And Paul Gilbert, the guitarist.
Wow.
Yeah, and engineered and produced not only by the one and only Andy Johns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's a name.
We spent 3 days in the studio with Andy Johns and Billy Sheehan and Paul Gilbert. And, it was surreal.
Those are two virtuoso, if there ever was,
If there ever was, exactly. But I met Michael then, and Michael and I quickly became friends, and he realized that I could provide him with what we call sound-alike tracks. So if the movie he was music supervising couldn't afford a sync license for a song by, Aerosmith or something, he would say, please write me a song that sounds like, and this song, Shake Off the Rain, was sort of in the mode of the Cult. He needed a song, by the Cult, but couldn't get a song. So I tried to emulate, what's the Cult singer's name?
Ian Astbury.
Yes, Ian Astbury.
Yeah.
It's been a dog load. Anyway, I was trying to be kind of him and kind of Jim Morrison at the same time.
Yeah.
And Yeah, go and so it could either have been we wrote a song for, or I wrote a song for him for. Robin Williams was in a movie about gambling at Hollywood, Hollywood Park.
Hmm.
What
Okay.
was that movie
I
called? It was
can't
called,
think of the name.
yeah, like not All or Nothing, but something, a gambling term. He was
Yeah.
working at that and some other films like that. And Steam, I'm sure, was the same situation. We were trying to get a song in a film, which neither one of them ended up in a film, which is why I included them here.
Well, see, what I heard in these two tracks was like a Kenny Logginish kind of vibe, particularly on Steam, was where I really picked up. And it sort of made me think, you did these in '87, right after Top Gun, if you were going for like a Danger Zone kind of thing or something like that.
Well,
Some of the more aggressive Kenny Loggins stuff.
yeah, exactly. Well, Michael Dilbeck's, biggest claim to fame is he was the music supervisor on Top Gun
Oh, really?
and Footloose. So he, developed a friendship and working friendship with Kenny Loggins on those two films.
Hmm.
So it's no coincidence that you're hearing some of that in there.
Yeah.
Probably.
Wow. Fabulous stuff.
Yeah. Oh man, you have really good ears, Lance. You pick up on very subtle things that are very, I wouldn't say huge, but they're very foundational to a situation.
And I appreciate that, and this is where I love to be able to talk to the artist. And I just did an interview earlier today with Alessandro Del Vecchio, who does a lot of stuff for Frontiers Records, a lot of rock stuff. And I was talking about him, a song that he's got, a band he's put together now called Sunstorm. And we're talking about one song, and I'm like, I'm hearing a lot of Dawkins in this. It sounds very Dawkins-ish from the '80s. He said, you hit the nail on the head. He said the same thing. I had really good ears. So
Okay.
I definitely appreciate it.
It's fun to talk to somebody who's educated. There's nothing worse than having a conversation with someone who doesn't have any idea what you're talking about. So yeah, it's really gratifying. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. I'll ask you the same question I asked him because we got a little bit of time here.
Okay.
Do you remember an artist or maybe a couple of artists that were the most fun to work with? I realize I'm asking you to single people out, but maybe pick your top two of artists that were the most fun to work with. And then maybe someone who challenged you the most. And by challenge, I'm not saying be difficult, but just really made you sharpen your pencil and work on your rhythms and stuff like that.
Okay. The challenging ones are numerous because you always want to do well in the session. You always want to, not look stupid, obviously, and just sort of have a good feeling when you leave the room.
Yeah.
And then the fun, I have to. This is the one and only Quincy Jones who is the most fun artist, writer, musician, talent, human being. Every time I was in the studio with Quincy, I always was reminded of why I was doing what I was doing. He was inspirational on that level. He was just every minute of the session, and some of them would go months long. Every day you would show up and there would be a new surprise. There would be something learned. There would be laughing, uncontrollably laughing. He had a real method about getting the best out of people, which was to kind of hang out for half an hour, just shooting the stuff, and just sort of talking about stuff and families and past. Obviously the guy has so many stories.
Oh yeah.
Everything he's done. So I just always came back with the feeling that that's why I do what I do. That's why I don't do anything else in the world, because that guy makes me feel so gratified and satisfied.
Yeah. I can echo that with you. This is where, I sit down afterwards and I think I listen to these stories, I listen to the names and the things behind everything, and this is why I do what I do. This is just amazing to sit here and to have listened to music for so long, to get to talk to people about it all is a tremendous gift. Tremendous gift,
Well, you're excellent. You're an excellent conversationalist, and you do your homework, and it makes a huge difference, and it makes the time go by. I can't even believe that we're already out of time.
Yeah, we're getting. I'm watching my clock. I got about 8 minutes, but I got to ask you before we get. I got some more silly questions for you, but I got to ask you one more serious, semi-serious, semi-silly.
Okay.
Is there a song that you've heard where you thought, "Damn, I wish I'd have wrote that"?
Yeah. Can you write down the number 1 and then 9 zeros after that?
How about your top one?
Well, that's just super hard. I can't even. I mean, what comes to mind is my newest favorite song, which is called "I'll Make a Fire" by the Foo Fighters. That I wish I'd written that, but I also wish that I'd written "After the Love Is Gone" or oh my gosh, any Beatles song really, any of the classics. But that's such a hard. I guess it depends on the context. Which song would I have loved to have written for its commercial value? Which one would I have loved to have written for its artistic value?
Yeah.
Which one for its emotional value? I would have to think about those things. I mean, there are certain songs that make you cry.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, being a songwriter, I wish I'd written them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a loaded question, dude.
I'll tell you, the tune that I saw the first 3 times I watched the video of it, it got to a certain part towards the end. It hit me so emotionally, was Beth Hart with Joe Bonamassa doing "I'd Rather Go Blind."
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there's a part after he does his solo, she goes back into things. And I mean, if you don't feel some type of emotion or well up with tears in your eyes, you got to check your pulse. Just the way she delivers and her expressions and the look is, music can touch you, that.
Yeah. Well, those are 2 heavyweights right there.
Yeah.
Love working with him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Has there been someone that you haven't worked with yet you'd really like to?
Yeah, I get asked that, and there are. It's funny that Imogene Heap comes to mind because I love her vocals so much, and I would love to work with her as a vocalist. She is a vocalist, obviously. But yeah, I mean, there are several. There are a lot of levels of that. There's the level of the fly on the wall. I'd like to be in a Peter Gabriel session,
yeah.
or I just think that Dave Grohl and I feel like we've been friends our whole lives, and I've never met the guy.
Yeah.
Because I love his music so much, and I love what kind of guy he is, what kind of human being he is. But yeah, again, there are many.
Yeah. All right, silly questions time.
Okay.
I should have kept track of the ones I asked you last week. I hope I don't repeat them. I'm going to try not to.
You know what? I'll give you a different answer.
Okay. Late at night and you're hungry, what do you grab for a midnight snack?
Oh, you're not going to believe this. I always keep a nice big bowl of cherry tomatoes.
Really?
Grown on the vine, organic cherry tomatoes. Yeah, because if I start eating popcorn or crackers or chips and guacamole, I'm just going to blow up like a balloon. So I love tomatoes.
All right. Would you rather have gills to swim underwater with or wings to fly?
Oh, wings to fly, no question.
All right. Favorite superhero?
I was a big Superman fan, of course, when I was a kid.
Okay.
That is so much so that my mother made me a silk cape.
Nice.
And I wore it. I would lie on the back of the couch, on the top of the couch with my tummy down, and I would pretend to fly like he did.
That's cool.
So yeah, I'm not into the the sort of Marvel superhero
Right.
films of the day, so I can't name you a modern one. So
Yeah.
I'll just go with Superman.
All right, we'll go in the opposite direction. Favorite villain?
Villain. Oh man, there was a villain. There's a creepy guy in Arsenic and Olace, the Cary Grant film.
Okay.
It turned out to be his brother, John, and he was a creepy guy. But the scariest movie to me in the world is Night of the Living Dead, and I'm talking about the one from the '60s,
Mm-hmm.
where the world gets taken over by zombies.
Yeah.
And so any one of those people could have been the most creepy, got the most creepy award for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite old school wrestler?
Oh man, you know what? I'm gonna decline because I'm not a fan.
Not a fan? Okay. All right.
So meaning I don't have knowledge.
Yeah.
Not being a fan, so I wouldn't really know what.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Last one. Last music you listen to other than your own? Probably that song I sent you the other night.
Well, definitely Making a Fire from Foo Fighters. I've been listening to that sort of nonstop for the last 3 days.
Yeah.
So I would almost guarantee that was the last thing I heard, although I had the oldie station on, and I think they played, they played something from the 60s, not Roy Orbison, but some guy. So that, I'm not answering the question very well. I'm going to say Foo Fighters, 100%.
All right. Very cool. Clif, as always, this has been a lot of fun listening to the stories, the names, the stories behind the songs. I can't wait to get to disc 3, and and then we got one more with disc 4 after that. So looking forward to some quality conversation.
Thank you so much again, and thanks for being so prepared and being a music fan. That's kind of how we all started out, I believe, is just being fans of music, and it's always fun to talk to another fan.
Absolutely. And the places it takes us, it's amazing.
Exactly. I'll see you next week, dear. I'll hear you next week.
Sounds good, Clif. Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good week. Bye.